Alright, so how many of you guys have ever had a different kind of candy, such as M&M's, Skittles, you got Twix bars, Snickers, just Hershey bars?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Right
all
here.
those companies, most people don't realize this, but they keep the secrets. And example I found in one of the books that I've read, it's called The Emperors of Chocolate. I meant to bring it with me, I don't have it here with me right now. But if you were to put into a call to say like the Hershey's company and ask them about maybe a certain chocolate or something that they make, they will say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question, and they will hang up on you. They keep those secrets guarded like you wouldn't believe. And it's unbelievable how close guarded they are. And these two, Hershey's and Mars, are two of the biggest companies in candy, because Mars will make, how many of you have had M&M's? Mars
Right
is
here.
the ones who created M&M's, and Hershey's, everybody knows Hershey's has Reese's, the Hershey bar in general. And it's just some of the things that people try to get out of them, and the money that you can make from chocolate and candy production is ridiculous. But these are two of the biggest competitors, and I'm going to explain to you how this started and why it's still going on today. Some of the two founders for Hershey, on the left you have Milton Hershey. His father was big into the candy business, but he was born on September 13th, 1857 in Lancaster, PA. Forrest Mars Sr., he has a son now who took over the Mars business, but Mars Sr. was born on March 21st, 1904 in Minnesota. His parents were divorced, so he moved with his mother to Canada and was raised there. After Mars was first introduced to candy when he was at a young age. He worked with his father after his father decided, hey, why don't you come back with me and we'll work together. This was after Mars Sr. had spent some time in England. He was working there with some specific candy businesses. I'm not exactly sure which ones they were, but in The Emperors of Chocolate it explains he worked in a certain group of companies over in England. Hershey, he became a candy maker's apprentice when he was 15 or 16. This was also in his hometown of Lancaster. And he loved chocolate ever since then. He loved making the money from it. But Mars, one of his biggest things was production. He always wanted things to be perfect. No matter what was going on, his thing was the product has to be good and people will buy it. This competition's been going since the early 1930s. This was when Mars was dependent on Hershey for their chocolate. This was after Hershey had started making chocolate. Mars was dependent on Hershey for the chocolate that they were getting. And finally, Forrest Mars had just had enough. He hated being dependent on Hershey for the chocolate for, say, the M&M's and the Twix bars and the Three Musketeers. And he just finally said enough is enough and just decided to break away. And that was when he promised Milton Hershey that he would beat him at his own game and become a more popular chocolate and candy business than he would. During the time that the war started to begin, World War II broke out, which Hershey was one of the biggest suppliers for the Army's chocolate. You can see the Hershey's Tropical Chocolate Bar was one of the biggest things that was in the Army rations. They had, I don't know how many in their specific rations, but that was probably the biggest thing that the soldiers looked forward to. They'd be like, oh, they'd be trading around for things. And two of the biggest things that they would trade during the war, cigarettes and chocolate. Those two of the biggest things, and it's something that no one realizes. But during the war, Mars was taking control of certain smaller companies and building up his empire on it, such as Uncle Ben's Rice, and one of the other ones was, there's a specific pet food, I think it's, I'm not entirely sure, but it's a certain kind of very popular pet food today, and they've They have control of that, and just it's not just specifically chocolate they're sticking with, but they're going all sorts of consumer products that they know they can make a large profit off of. But like I was saying, Mars his biggest thing was product. If he were to find out that such like the M&Ms, if the M was slightly off or there wasn't an M on the M&M, he would go to the factory where that M&M was produced, find out who the worker was who was working that day, go to their house, and he would go ballistic. He would start screaming at the employee. He would go absolutely crazy just because he was so focused on producing a better product. Hershey, they worked. Hershey took control of his workers, and he's got the town of Hershey in PA. That was the city he had created for his workers so they could stay there and have good living conditions and be near the factory so they could work. Throughout the years after the war, Mars started to catch up with Hershey, and Hershey started worrying. So they started copying them on some of their products, like the M&Ms. Hershey, how many of you have had Reese's Pieces?
Right here.
Hershey took the idea of the M&M and tried to copy, and they made the Reese's Pieces after they had made the Reese's Cups and Reese's Bars that you all love. But they did that, but they still found out that M&Ms, just for their consistency and the way people enjoyed them, they just weren't, the Reese's Pieces weren't as popular as M&Ms, and he just didn't understand why. After the war was, and the war is still going on today, I'm not sure why I put after, but the war is still going on. Not many people know that it is, but it's just continual, and through the years it's gotten more and more intense. Like during, how many of you have seen E.T., the movie E.T.? The scene where the little boy is leading E.T. through the woods with the Reese's Pieces, the film production actually went to Mars and asked them if they could use M&Ms for the movie, but they weren't allowed to show them the script, the character, or any of the plot or anything about the movie. Mars said no because he didn't want to take the game. So they went to Hershey's and he asked, can we use Reese's Pieces? He didn't know anything about the movie and didn't know what was going on. All they could show him was the creature. But he went for it, took a blind gamble, and it made them lots and lots of money just from that movie. And they're still making lots of profit today on all sorts of things, because Mars now owns quite a few different companies, and Hershey, they've been making money. But nowadays, Mars is now ahead of Hershey. They just did a total for this year. Mars is ahead $16 billion to Hershey's $14 billion, and it's just, compared to the way it was back then, Hershey's really dropping the ball on this one. But the biggest thing, the reason that they sell so much is because they both realized where people are going to get the stuff. Where are people going to want a snack? When are they going to want it? When are the kids going to want it? They put it in the snack lines at the grocery stores. They put it right where you're going to check out. And something that I found out that was kind of interesting, my dad actually told me this because he worked with my grandpa, and my grandpa owned a candy store and knew pretty much everything there was to know about it. But he would find out that Hershey would come in and put their chocolate in the racks, and then later that day the Mars candy salesman would take the Hershey bar, move it down to the bottom rack, and then put the Mars bars up there, just trying to one-up each other, and it was going on constantly, just continuously. So the war is still going on today, and they still compete vigorously to try to beat one another. I hope this has been informative for you guys and just kind of interesting, because I know I found almost everything that I found was a complete shock and very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.